There are very legitimate concerns that 2019 could be the worst NFL season of all time. Not in the way that the sky is falling and the NFL will be gone in 20 years contingency would like you to think. The NFL is still littered with talent and the storylines are interesting as ever. But all the growth that the NFL has experienced has put it on a pedestal. And as a result, the decision-making process seems to have shifted from the most exciting games and plays, but to diva drama and a mishmash of rules and safety concerns. With all the money coming in and the success the league is having, the fact is that the NFL has reached a peak only rivaled by the big-time banks that run our economy. The NFL is just too big to fail, which has put the league in a position to make decisions about the fate of the game that will be wildly unpopular with its core fan base. Let's start with something painfully obvious that the NFL can't seem to figure out. We still don't know what a catch is. It's crazy. Completely unfathomable, really, that we are just coming up on nearly 5 years since the infamous Dez Bryant catch/non-catch, and we somehow have even less of an understanding as to what constitutes a catch in the NFL. Rather than workshop the rule heading into the 2019 season, the NFL felt like it was just enough to toy around with the wording. Now we just need to make sure that the receiver, quote, performs any act common to the game, end quote. Like that really clears up what a football move is. And it is such a basic facet of the game, yet for some reason the NFL seems focused on everything other than taking subjective pieces of the game that drive fans crazy out of the sport. In fact, they seem to be hell-bent on adding more subjectivity. Like the referees didn't have a hard enough job as it stood. Not only is the catch rule still wildly subjective, the NFL has rolled out new pieces of legislation that have clouded other parts of the game. Officials can now disqualify a player for a flagrant football play, whereas they could previously only do so for flagrant non-football plays. Clear as mud, right? Basically, the rule now allows designated members of the league's officiating team that sit out in New York to determine a flagrant foul, regardless of what the intent was. Previously, if a player was doing something within the scope of the game, like inadvertently come in too close for a high hit, they could receive a personal foul, but they'd almost certainly remain in the game. Now, New York can call in to the on-the-field officiating crew and demand a player be ejected from the game for one of those incidental plays that are unavoidable at the speed the game is played nowadays. What could possibly go wrong? This will undoubtedly only lead to more confusion, controversy, and frustration.
Unnecessary, after the play was over, unnecessary roughness on number 52. Excuse me a minute.
Okay.
In addition to expanding the power that the officiating office has, the NFL has also expanded the power of the referees on the field, particularly in regards to replay review. It's funny to think about how much the NFL has really jumped the shark regarding instant replay. It was so groundbreaking and there was so much excitement around it when they first introduced it in 1999. But now fans would almost rather we go back to the Stone Age and completely omit it from the game. It has gotten to the point where big-name NFL coaches are even speaking out against the expansion of instant replay, or even getting rid of it altogether.
I'd like to eliminate instant replay, honestly. That'd be my number one thing.
Yeah.
Let the officials call the game, and that's just my opinion.
Obviously, there is a degree of hyperbole involved, but it has gotten completely out of control. This season, the NFL has expanded replay in the form of a three-headed monster that will slow the game down immensely. First, any penalty that negates a would-be scoring play can now be reviewed. Second, any reviews for extra points or two-point conversion attempts will be initiated by the replay official, rather than acquiring a coach's challenge. Lastly, and arguably worst of all, now all pass interference can be reviewed, whether it is called or not. Think about the logistical challenges to enforcing this. A whole play occurs, no whistle has been blown, but a coach can now challenge whether or not pass interference occurred. This reeks of an overcorrection stemming from the botched call at the end of last year's NFC Championship game between the Rams and the Saints. Granted, the call was so egregious that the NFL has quite literally found itself entrenched in litigation over it, but still, that doesn't mean we need to start reviewing everything that is and isn't called. NFL games are slow enough as it is. Another theme for this year's NFL season that just won't go away is the push and pull between football and safety. As an entity famous for its never-ending public relations war, the NFL has found another topic to completely mishandle, exhausting and frustrating fans. Let me be clear, I am in no way downplaying the safety concerns around football. As a fan of the game, there is nothing worse than watching players go down with an injury, but the way the NFL chooses to handle it is just so insincere. Every new rule that the NFL rolls out is so painfully reactive and poorly thought out. At some point, the NFL has to accept the fact that NFL is inherently a violent sport, and there is only so much that you can do to increase player safety. For example, just 3 months after the tragic play that resulted in Steelers linebacker needing spinal stabilization surgery, the NFL passed a new policy that attempts to completely take headfirst collisions out of football. Again, don't get me wrong, what happened to Ryan was horrible, but it was an anomaly, and to completely change the way guys are allowed to hit might be a bit of an overreaction. The NFL now requires players that are trying to make crucial plays in just a split second to make a decision and an action to follow a criteria that just isn't possible in some situations. There are 3 portions of the rule. Number 1, player lowers his helmet to establish a linear body posture prior to initiating and making contact with the helmet. Number 2, an obstructed path to his opponent. Number 3, contact clearly avoidable and player delivering the blow had other options. While this all sounds great in concept, how many times have you seen a tackler accidentally hit the ball carrier head-on because the ball carrier lowers his upper body? There's just no way for the defense to avoid that, yet they are penalized time and time again. The ever-outspoken Washington Redskins cornerback Josh Norman spoke out against the rule last year when it came out. Quote, "I don't know how you're going to play the game. If your helmet comes in contact, how are you going to avoid that if you're in the trenches and hitting a running back face mask to face mask and accidentally graze the helmet? It's obviously going to happen, so I don't even know what that definition looks like." End quote. A number of other current and former players spoke out through various mediums, and the sentiment remained the same. They were left wondering what the NFL is thinking. Quote, "We were trying to ask questions to get a better understanding, and yet they couldn't really give us an answer." End quote. Eagles linebacker Nigel Bradham told ESPN, quote, "They couldn't give us what we were looking for." End quote. I think the most frustrating part of these kinds of decisions is how obvious the NFL's posturing is to the fans. The NFL puts in rules like this one to say, "Hey everyone, ignore the enormous CTE problem associated with our beloved game. We are doing things to protect the players," when in reality all the NFL is doing is diluting the on-the-field product without actually eliminating the risks that the players accept when they decide to pursue a career in professional football. If they would just admit that the game has its drawbacks and accept the fact that the men playing the game are adults who have chosen to incur the risks associated with it, the transparency alone would be so refreshing. On top of all the rule changes that no one seems particularly excited about, there are a couple of storylines that will get way too much story coverage. I'm looking at you, Antonio Brown.
We've pretty much exhausted all avenues of relief. So from our perspective, it's time for him to be all in or all out.
As much as everyone is anxiously awaiting the end result of the show that the Antonio Brown plus John Gruden plus Hard Knocks equation promises to be, the media will undoubtedly run it into the ground. The party has already started too. A few days ago, Gruden told reporters that the team was disappointed that Brown was absent from the Raiders' first few days of camp. The team then decided not to disclose what was ailing the wideout, a decision they likely are regretting, as Brown made waves on the internet by posting disgusting pictures of the blisters on his feet that he credits with keeping him out of camp. This is where we have gotten to with Antonio Brown. The same guy who gained fame and fortune through elite play and tireless grit is now making Instagram stories with pictures of his feet and sitting out of camp on his first season with a brand new team. Fans did get some good news back in February when Jason Witten announced that he was going to pursue a comeback with the Dallas Cowboys, thus removing himself from the weekly ridicule his Monday Night Football broadcast was met with. But Monday Night Football has already presented itself as another avenue of the upcoming season that people have already started to take issue with, specifically its 2019 Monday night schedule that has many NFL fans up in arms. Week 1, the lone week with 2 Monday Night Football matchups, start off with a decent game between the Houston Texans and New Orleans Saints, 2 teams that most figure to be in the mix this postseason. However, the second matchup features the aforementioned Oakland Raiders and the new Joe Flacco-led Denver Broncos. Talk about a clunker. Even amongst all of this new season excitement, it's hard to imagine that anyone outside of the local markets has this 10:20 Eastern game on for more than a quarter or two. What's worse is the fact that the Monday Night Football matchup between 2 2018 playoff teams doesn't happen until Week 11. Now, if you are wondering how it is possible that the NFL would create such a lackluster Monday night slate, as I am sure many are, it's because it loves to schedule the teams that have all of the offseason hype around them, even if it isn't necessarily deserved. I mean, everyone and their mother, except Colin Cowherd, is excited about Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, and there is an actual sense of hope for the New York Jets for the first time in forever with the acquisition of Le'Veon Bell and quarterback Sam Darnold going into his second year. But does that really warrant seeing both franchises featured on Monday Night Football twice, each by Week 7? It really does seem like the NFL is determined to dominate headlines and win some petty public relations battles, rather than focus on the product on the field. Perhaps it's just preseason jitters, but I think there should be some serious concern for this upcoming NFL season. And if you're new here and not subscribed yet, we'd love it if you do that by clicking the subscribe button down below for more cool videos. If you like the video, then like the video. We'd really appreciate it. And last but not least, don't forget to tune back in to TPS for more awesome sports stuff. That's what we do here. I'll see you guys next time.